Hey guys, this is Raz, and this week we're talking with Jenn Gray about using Facebook to increase the power of your campaign, finding quick, cheap, easy ways to promote you and get your name and your message out there to voters without breaking the bank. So she's going to teach us a lot about that. But before we get in there, I want to give you guys a quick announcement. Yesterday, we released the self-paced version of our flagship course, the Advanced Candidate course, available for you to purchase online and go through. There's over 15 hours of content that we're going to be putting up there. We're putting all kinds of free downloads, templates. We're going to even have some guest lectures on there from folks that are experts in their own field, the specific niches that they operate in. And it's a really powerful course. We've got some great reviews on when we've done it live, but we want to release that to you guys where you can take it on your own time because you're busy folks. We're taking the same types of topics that we talk about every week. We're breaking down the campaigns, the major systems into finance, logistics, air, ground, and strategy. And we're walking you guys through there to help you guys, good people, get elected to do great things. We're giving you all a special discount as well. We're giving you guys a head start. You're 24 hours behind the email list subscribers because those are the folks we give the first access to. But we're giving you guys 24 hours head start on the rest of the world, the internet and Facebook and all the other folks that are out there to get 25 spots that we have available where we're giving a 50% discount on the course, which is about $250 in savings. So if you're in those first 25 folks to sign up, you get 50% off. If you're not and you still register before the end of August, we're going to give you a 25% off. That's a really great savings on an incredibly valuable course. We're confident based on our results we've seen, the feedback we've got, and the work we put into it, that it's going to really change the way you run your campaign, and it's going to increase your chances dramatically of winning your race. If you're interested in checking it out, go to learn.mycampaigncoach.com and see what we've got put together for you guys. All right, now let's get to the interview with Jenn Gray.
This is the My Campaign Coach podcast, where we talk about how to win elections. Every week, we let you hear straight from the best consultants, operatives, and candidates in the game, all for one reason, to help you win. For more information about how we can help you win, visit mycampaigncoach.com. Now, here's your host, Raj Schaefer.
Welcome to the How to Run for Office podcast from My Campaign Coach. Each week, I get to interview candidates, elected officials, and campaign rock stars, but this week is kind of special to me because not only is our guest an incredibly effective campaign operative, but she's also a long-lost friend from college. Jenn Gray and I first got to know each other while we were attending Hillsdale College and spent some quality time together in a number of economics classes and enjoying more than a few Greek events. Since graduating, Jenn has worked throughout the Liberty movement, everywhere from development to social media, and made quite a name for herself as somebody that can get things done and an absolute rock star in every arena she's entered. She's a true innovator and has become known even outside the libertarian community as someone who is constantly looking for new, more efficient ways to run campaigns, win votes, and raise money. Her mission is to help pro-liberty causes and campaigns change hearts and minds and attract the perfect prospects with innovative social media advertising. Some of the things she's done and been able to do with Facebook are mind-boggling, and I'm really excited to find out more about the advice she has for more efficiently marketing and effectively communicating a pro-liberty message. Jenn is also a fellow podcast host of the Leading Liberty podcast, where she focuses on giving pro-liberty professionals a way to educate themselves on marketing, communication, and activism from some of the leading minds in the liberty movement. Jenn, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Raz. Thanks so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, it's great. I've been loving listening to your podcast since you started. How many episodes you got so far?
I think about 20 as of the time of this recording. I think you're going to be 21.
There we go. Jenn and I actually just got done cutting an interview with me on her podcast, so we'll be linking to that when that publishes as well. So we're just kind of making an afternoon of it, doing buddy recording on the podcast and having a lot of fun. So it's been great having access to some of that information that you've been sharing, and I've learned a lot, especially on the social media side, because that's an area where it's always changing, and there's just so much to learn on a daily basis to make sure that we're doing the right things over and over again. Before we get into the kind of nitty-gritty of what you do and some of those chief strategies that you recommend folks adopt and some of the great things you've been able to innovate in, let's start out kind of talking about where you started out. Kind of where'd you come from? How'd you get involved in pro-liberty causes, and how'd you develop into who you are today?
Yeah, so you know a little bit of my backstory and that I went to the only school in the country that doesn't take any federal or state money. And what was funny is that I started out as a language major because my parents both worked for the NSA. So I have kind of a really unusual freedom fighter origin story. I thought I was going in to major in a language to prepare to go in and be a linguist, like my mom. She was a Russian linguist during the Cold War, and she told me that if I wanted to study languages, I could get paid to, the government would pay me to learn more. And I thought, well, that sounds pretty great. But as I got further into, the curriculum at Hillsdale, and I was kind of a team Republican at that point because I just, I grew up in a Republican area, and that's what you do. And I'd started the Young Republicans Club, and all this good stuff. But I hadn't really thought about why I felt the way I did until I got into Bert Folsom's economic history class and a constitutional history class and political economy classes, and it really just changed my entire paradigm in what I thought the role of government should be. So instead of going to the NSA, I went to the Goldwater Institute in Arizona instead. At that point, I was looking for whatever the opposite of Michigan was. So I came out to Arizona and did some fundraising at the Goldwater Institute. And that was a really cool experience. I learned a lot. But the big challenge and frustration that I had was that all our donors were like 90 years old, and I'm 21 at the time, and I'm realizing that I felt like our fundraising model was a little bit unsustainable because we really just didn't have a great way to get out in front of younger, liberty-leaning people. And I feel like liberty is a very attractive message to people our age, but I mean, you got to keep in mind that social media was in its infancy at that point, and the things that we can do today just weren't even an option at that time. So I was frustrated about that, but really didn't know what the solution was. I ended up going from there to work at an organization called the Prometheus Institute, and they built iPhone apps for local government engagement. And I thought, okay, well, we're getting a little closer. This is something that younger people can use, something they get. I'm big on the importance of starting local and bottom up rather than top down change. And that was a cool experience. But then I had my daughter and wanted to stay home with her for a little bit. Ended up starting a little fitness business just to give myself something to do at that point. And I was looking for new ways to market that business because I was initially trying to advertise it in all the ways that I had tried to raise money, for a think tank, using stuff like, direct mail and events. And it was not working. And I thought there's got to be a better way to do this. And this is right around the time that video advertising was really kind of blowing up and becoming a thing. So I thought, well, I'm going to learn that. So I invested a bunch of time and money into learning everything I could learn about video advertising, Facebook advertising, email marketing, because if I was going to do it, I wanted to do it right because I was tired of doing things that weren't working.
Right.
So in that experience, I tested something where I took the same exact message that I had used in an ad that wasn't working very well and recorded myself delivering it on camera, literally verbatim, and got 10 times the result. Brought more people onto my email list in a week than I'd helped the entire year before that. And that was a huge game changer for me. And I realized that this had some implications for the freedom movement. What I was really, really passionate about. I thought, man, this might be a cool way to reach people about the liberty message too. But I kind of just tucked that in my back pocket because that's just not where I was at that stage of my life. But when Gary Johnson's campaign rolled around, I had volunteered to help them out and never heard back. And I read in an article that they were featured in Reason Magazine where they mentioned that they weren't doing any paid placement on their videos. And that kind of broke my heart a little bit.
You're like, no.
Because their videos were so good, and when you post something organically, the only people who see it for the most part are people who already know you and already like you. And really the whole value in doing video is to introduce yourself to people who don't already know you. So I offered to run those videos because you could be getting a view for a penny a piece, a tenth of a penny of a piece. It's such a great way to get your message out in such an inexpensive way, which obviously is a huge challenge for a lot of campaigns, just the shortage of funds. And when I didn't hear back, I was like, well, I'm just going to do it myself. So I started shooting videos, interviewing veterans for Gary and interviewing his supporters and running videos like that. And I was self-funding that, but I thought, well, that's okay because I know how to turn around and turn views into money from my marketing consulting business that kind of got squeezed in between the fitness and the political stuff. And so I started retargeting those viewers saying, hey, for every dollar you chip in today, we can reach 1,000 more people tomorrow. And that $3 ad raised $300. And that was the rest was history. I was all back in on the political side at that point, working with pro-liberty causes and campaigns, just talking to people I knew from my freedom movement days about the challenges they were having with social media and saying, hey, there's a really cool opportunity here for ways to reach people and acquire new subscribers and donors and so many awesome things we could do. So yeah, it was kind of a crazy evolution, but it's a cool place to be.
No, that's a fascinating story, and it's just one that I just love hearing each of our guests and just meeting new people and finding out kind of what's brought them to where they are, both the genesis of their ideology and what makes them passionate about politics, as well as functionally how they got involved, how they made it a full-time gig, or how they became somebody that was prepared to run for office. Because each one's different, but you see a lot of those same themes. And so I love hearing those, and yours is a special one, especially because of how you kind of set that aside for a while and then came back to it, and how finding a new innovative approach to a problem that was both a corporate or a marketing issue in the non-political sphere, as well as an area, kind of a pain point in politics, was you discovered that. And so, you know what, this is pretty cool. We can continue to innovate there. And it seems to have been that love of finding new ways to do things and building that better mousetrap really drew you back in and has made you a powerhouse in this world.
Well, thank you so much.
Well, it's true, and just looking at talking to some of the folks and reading some of the reviews that folks have given you and the work you've done makes it clear that that's true. Let's kind of talk about, so once you got back involved, you did some of the stuff for Johnson, and that was during the 2016 cycle, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so you got involved more there, and you've been doing more and more with different causes and campaigns. And you just announced the other day you're running the digital stuff for a gentleman that's running as Libertarian candidate for New York governor, right?
Yes, that is such an exciting opportunity. I'm so thrilled to be a part of that. And there was another campaign I worked on in 2016 that really influenced me a lot. It was a city council campaign, and that's where I really realized that that's where a little could go a long way. And so I've worked on several other, libertarian, primarily libertarian, but also some Republican campaigns since then. And now I've got Larry Sharpe, who's running for governor of New York. He was the runner-up for VP for the Libertarian Party, so to run with Gary Johnson, and he lost to Bill Weld by like 30 votes. And he is an incredible communicator for liberty. He is so great at finding common ground with both conservatives and progressives for pro-liberty ideas, and it's a huge honor to be a part of what he's doing. And also going to be working with Reason Magazine starting on Monday, so lots of exciting stuff on deck.
No, that's pretty incredible. Just real quick, what are you going to be doing over at Reason? Are you just be writing for them, or what all are you going to be doing over there?
I'm going to be a digital marketing strategist for them, really just helping them make data-driven decisions about their messaging, because they have such a huge audience, and such a great message and such a great resource in the magazine. So I'm going to be helping them target new audiences, get into their data to understand who their audience is, what they like, what they want, what's resonating, what's not, and use the views they're getting on their video to drive traffic to their email list and donor acquisition efforts.
I've been a longtime fan of theirs and reader. Tell the listeners a little bit more about them so they can kind of get what you're doing there.
Yeah, so in my humble opinion, I think Reason is the best alternative news outlet in the freedom movement. I've been following them, donating and supporting and sharing their work for years. I first got to know them in the think tank world, and I loved that they did a really great job of taking news stories and presenting them in a way that they kind of they sneaked liberty in there, or like tied it to cultural references. And I felt like it was something that they do a really good job of consistently creating content that I feel like I can share with people who don't necessarily think about government the way you and I do, and it's something that feels objective and compelling to them. So they've got Reason TV, which is their primary video outlet, and then they've also got Reason Magazine, which is another amazing resource that just became available for digital subscriptions. So I'm going to be focusing some effort there to bring people onto that list.
Well, and that kind of ties us into your main passion area, which is kind of why you guys work together, and that is that conservative and libertarian principles, just the pro-liberty movement. That one of the biggest hurdles we have to overcome is, especially in popular culture, with so much pressure behind progressive ideals and liberalism in what we call it the mainstream media, or just the world and popular culture, that we have in many cases an uphill battle. And that we have to communicate. And we've learned from seeing and doing over the last couple of decades that we've learned a lot of ways how not to communicate this message. We got a lot of examples of failures. But yet, when we look at these core principles of individual liberty, of limited government, of fiscal responsibility, these are things that are not just a big R Republican idea. They're not. They shouldn't be just a big L libertarian idea. These are true. From the founding era on, limited government principles, and something that I think a lot of people can get behind if they can get past the letter associated with them, if they can get past some of those barriers. And an area that is very clear, you've been doing a lot of work, is how do we communicate that, especially to a younger generation, and how do we get kind of crack out of that old way of communicating that hasn't always worked into a new era, especially in the digital realm. What are some of those keys that you see to try to communicate that message better, and how have you seen that working?
Well, you brought up a great point there, that we do have a huge challenge with the mainstream media and that they are very biased against the liberty message. But what's really cool about the time we're living in now is that with the way that Facebook marketing in particular is evolving, almost anyone can be their own outlet and set the record straight. So if you have a great message, you can broadcast it yourself. Because what's interesting is that, looking at the trends in TV viewership and stuff, especially people, millennials, people our age, and even the people, up until their early 40s, are increasingly unplugging from TV, and they're choosing their own outlets. And we can be very specific about who we want to talk to and about what we want them to do next. So with TV, where it's just everything is just kind of being broadcast into whatever, you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall. You have no idea what's sticking. There's no feedback on it whatsoever. With something like Facebook, we're able to really target specific people. Say I'm talking about criminal justice reform. I can target people who care about mass incarceration, people who follow Elizabeth Warren. Even certain Democrats who care about different issues, so we can start to find common ground, or whatever. People who read Reason Magazine, people who are fans of Rand Paul, whatever. You can find all these people on Facebook. People who are likely to donate to conservative political causes, people who engage in conservative political posts. All that stuff is available targeting wise, so that we can really get out in front of the people that we want to see. But most importantly, like you said, there are a lot of messaging failures that are happening, and when we don't have any data to back up what's happening, it's really hard to make strategic decisions about messaging moving forward. But what's cool is that, for example, if you're doing direct mail on your campaign, you spend maybe $2 a piece sending this thing out. You have no idea what happened to it along the way, where, if people opened it, if they didn't open it, if they just threw it away, if they read it and they liked it, but for whatever reason they didn't donate. You don't know where it fell apart, and you don't know what resonated, what didn't, how people reacted. Whereas when you're doing something digital, you get so much real-time feedback on what's resonating and what's not from a messaging perspective by being strategic with the tactical stuff that you can use to make decisions moving forward, that it ends up being a huge time and money saver in the long run. So for example, you could take the same video and put two different versions of the ad copy, of the copy that goes above it, and I'm almost always surprised by which variation wins. And the only way to do, numbers don't lie,
Right.
So we can test the ad copy that goes above it. We can test the headline that goes below it. We can test the call to action. We can test the audience. And, one of the things that's really surprised me in testing audiences and stuff like that is that a lot of times the top performing audiences are not what you would think, consistently, whenever I've been running ads for kind of pro-liberty type things, one of the top performing audience segments has been people who like political comedians, people who like Seth
Nice.
Meyers and Trevor Noah and John Oliver and Stephen Colbert. And, we tend to think of those guys as like, oh, like they're our enemies, they're our competition. And they're not. Like they have an audience of people who care about political stuff, but they're sick of all the bickering and just want to be kind of entertained by it because it's so depressing sometimes that we just kind of want to laugh about it, And so they have a very political audience that we can tap into for free. So, renting that proverbial digital list doesn't cost anything, and it only costs a penny to show something to those people. So you can spend, $10 running a messaging test that you can use in future ad campaigns and in your direct mail, depending on who you're targeting with your mail. I mean, just so many awesome things you can do.
That's fascinating. The political comedian thing makes sense, but that's not at all something that I would have thought of. And I guess you wouldn't have thought about it unless you tested it and you found out that was true. I love how much you can, A/B test with Facebook, with different headlines and email marketing, all those things. It's really cool. There's even plenty of tools with your website to test different headlines and blog titles. It's really fascinating how much you can do to target your audience very specifically and make sure that you're constantly delivering very, very targeted, effective content.
Yeah, and it really lets you kind of decide how you want to spend your money moving forward. So, for example, in one of the campaigns I'm working on right now, we said, okay, we just made this big announcement, and now we want to try to raise some money off of it next. So let's target a couple different. Let's start with $100, right? And we'll target a couple different audiences with video views, and then the people who actually watch that video, we're going to retarget them to raise some money, with a couple different variations. And based on the information we got in the first 24 hours for $20, I was able to scale turn off the ones that weren't performing as well and put more money onto the ones that were working, to the point that now for every dollar we're spending, we're raising 4.5 or 5.
That's
so
fantastic.
That initial 24 hours and $20 can give you so much information and so much leverage in terms of what you're going to do next.
Man, that's really cool. And I think especially, I like how you're doing that for fundraising. Of course, there's a lot of other applications, but let's spend a second on the fundraising aspect, because that's one of those things that it first turned you on to getting back into politics, was that experiment you ran with just doing some in-kind donating and running some videos for Gary Johnson. What are some of those main things that folks need to do when they're trying to raise money, not just spend money via Facebook?
Well, what's ironic, I think, is because of my background in fundraising, I kind of came to hate fundraising.
You do it enough, you hate it, yeah.
I hate asking people for money, especially when I'm not giving them something tangible in return. And so that was kind of what got me interested in Facebook advertising as a vehicle for the Liberty movement, is that it was a donor prospecting tool. It's an acquisition tool. It's not nobody's raising major gifts online. But, when you look at prospecting mail, for example, that mail, typically you're losing money for the first 2 years, and you're spending like $10,000 up front, and you're hoping, well, maybe 2 years later there's going to be a rich person on this list, and like maybe they'll write a $10,000 check and that'll be worth it. But half of the people who donate the first time are never going to give again anyway. Like, I hope this works. And that was so frustrating. So what Facebook ads in particular allow us to do from the prospecting side is to add value up front. So it's not like, hi, I'm Jen, nice to meet you, give me money. It's showing them a valuable piece of content first, and then behavior based. If and when they show an interest in that content, then you take them on the next step of the journey. It's not give me money right after that. It's, hey, here's a free thing. You want to get on our email list for this free thing that we just created? And then on the thank you page, hey, cool. You want to buy a t-shirt? You want to come to an event? Well, here's a special discounted ticket price. It's a strategic conversation that's all happening digitally. So from the fundraising side, if people want a really simple campaign they can start with, because I know that probably feels overwhelming, like, oh my gosh, you gotta have all these steps, and there's a lot of, technology that has to go into that, and email opt-ins can be their own like kind of crazy animal in terms
Right.
of making that work from a tech perspective, or at least to do it effectively. But if people want the super simple version of how to do an effective campaign, so it's a two-step process. And number one is to run some videos, test them, do a couple different concepts. I can give you some ideas of video concepts if that's helpful. We can cover that in the next line if you want. But test a couple different video concepts, whichever one works the best based on your data. So you create an audience of the people who watch each of these videos, and then the one that works the best, you run that same exact video to the audience of people who already watched it, right? Who watched between 10 seconds and 25%, depending how long your video is, with ad copy along the lines of, hey, did you like this video? Right? Because they did because they watched it.
Right.
Hey, did you like this video? Couple lines about why this is important. Because, if so, every dollar you chip in today gets it to 100 new people tomorrow. If you have some sort of incentive, reason why they should do it right now, they get a signed T-shirt or I don't know, whatever. You don't have to do that. You can. But consistently, and you show it to the people who've already seen it. When I have done that, on average, $1 raises between $10 and $100. But you got to keep in mind that has a limited shelf life, right? So that only works for about a week before people don't want to see it anymore. So you got to have some different types of content. So if you want, I can kind of back into some of the different types of video ads people can try, especially if you're working with limited resources, which I think most campaigns are. So what the good news, first of all, is that you don't need to spend a fortune on, production and all kinds of crazy equipment and stuff. Interesting kind of case study for you. When I was working on that city council campaign I mentioned, shortly before I came on, he spent a bunch of money on this 2.5 minute commercial. It was beautiful. It was a videography masterpiece. And I'm not a videographer. People assume, you do video ads, you're a videographer. And I'm like, no, that because Facebook, people aren't going on Facebook to watch commercials, right? Commercials have a time and a place, but that's not why people go on Facebook. They're going to Facebook to see their family and friends. So the more personal and authentic your content can be, it's important to have good lighting and decent sound quality and stuff, but the more authentic and kind of down to earth you can be, the better. Right? So live broadcasts are one of the best ways. You literally just flip your phone around and talk to people and be real for a little bit. That works really well, especially to the extent that you can get your supporters in there. So one of the concepts that worked the best, and we kind of just stumbled upon this organically, and where people might want to integrate with your area of expertise. When the candidate was out door knocking for that city council campaign, sometimes if he had a really great conversation with someone, he would say, hey, do you mind if I kind of interview you in a live broadcast? And he would literally stand there with his phone and live broadcast a conversation with this constituent, with this prospective voter, and people loved it. And so using that information, I then extracted clips of those conversations, and we used those in future ads to kind of repurpose that content. But that's like the absolute number one easiest thing you can do. Number two, because people like to see themselves in videos and people they already know, if you're trying to get yourself out in front of people in your area, you want to kind of think about, okay, number one, who's my target audience and what are they fans of? Where are they getting their news? Who are they following on social media, especially if that person is high profile enough for their pages to be targetable within Facebook audiences, right? So say you do you have a conversation with your local police chief or a teacher or a parent who's concerned about school choice or whatever. So you film that conversation either in person or using something like what we're using right now, Skype call recorders. So you've got a screen of this conversation happening. People see faces and they see someone who's relevant to something they care about. Nobody cares who you are at the get-go, right? Like they need a reason to care about what you're talking about. And if you can position yourself as, hey, I'm someone who has conversations with people like you. I'm someone who cares about issues you care about. Here's me talking to someone who cares about issues you care about. Here's someone who represents a page that you like. and here's me listening to them.
Yeah.
So they're doing most of the content creation work, but then you can run that video, that recording, as an ad to their fans or fans of relevant pages. So, for Gary Johnson's campaign, for example, I did the interviews of veterans who supported Gary and then ran that video as an ad to people who liked pages about, Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, support the troops, don't tread on me, all these sorts of military buzzword, military wives, stuff like that, because I knew that was something that they cared about based on interest that they'd identified within Facebook. So, it's kind of crazy how much data exists about us online, but to the extent that we can use it for good, I'm all for it. The other concept that works really well in terms of featuring other people, user-generated content, is voter testimonials. So you get 5 of your volunteers, 5 of your most eloquent, good-looking supporters, and have them head outside, literally with their iPhone, doesn't need to be anything fancy, and have them turn the camera around and say, I'm voting for Mark Wicks because, and tell literally 10 seconds maximum, give one sentence about why they're supporting your candidate. And this isn't something you would show to someone right out of the gate. This would be something that you would show to people who've already seen you somewhere before. This is kind of like a step 2, right? So people who've watched something before, they've landed on your page at some point, they've been to your website, and then you can show them, hey, here are people who look like you who are voting for me. And it takes literally 30 minutes to edit a video like that. You cut it down into 3-second max clips of those 5 people kind of compiled together into a 45-second little testimonial. And that works really well. Another one that kind of surprised me, one of the top performing video ads I've ever run, was a video that I created just as a joke, basically, during the last election cycle. It was a more serious video of the candidate discussing kind of a pain point that we'd identified within his audience by surveying people, which we can talk about that in a minute too. But he was talking about that pain point, and when we were shooting that day, he was kind of struggling.
It's a rough day behind the camera.
It was a rough day behind the camera, but he had a great sense of humor. And, there were so many points where, he's laughing or getting flustered and whatever. And so as I was cutting that video, I compiled a little B-roll thing and sent it to him. It was just for fun. He's like, this is hilarious. You should run it as an ad. And I was like,
why not?
Okay. And it was our most popular video of the entire campaign. And I think people got to see this very human side of him that you don't otherwise see, because politics is so buttoned up and it's so serious and there's so much at stake that we get so emotionally invested in it. We take everything so personally and we take it so seriously. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but I think there's a value in when people they've seen you doing the serious thing. They've seen you talking to community leaders. They've seen they've seen you out there knocking doors, talking to constituents. They've seen your supporters and they know why they're voting for you. And then toward the very end, if you can sneak in here's me just being an actual, normal, likable human being, I think there's a real value in that. And we kind of saw that. And when we retargeted those viewers, we gave people a chance to win lunch with him. And that was our key fundraising ad. Because I think it's important to have an incentive, some sort of quantifiable call to action that people can wrap their heads around. Because especially with low dollar donor acquisition, when you tell people, chip in $3 to fight the establishment, what does that mean? I don't understand what that means. There's no urgency to it. There's no scarcity. There's no incentive. But, during Gary's campaign, for example, when they said, chip in $25 for a chance to win lunch with Gary, sold. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be anything crazy. And to the extent that you can automate that process, on the thank you page or whatever, there are a lot of things you can do. And I kind of touched on briefly the importance of surveying. That's a really easy thing you can do on your thank you page. If you're running ads to your email list, if you can ask people on your thank you page to take a quick survey, literally a 2-question survey, right? Number 1, multiple choice. Which of the following issues are you most concerned about? Number 2, what's your biggest frustration with government in your city, state, area, whatever the relevant area is. And that will almost write your ad copy for you.
Absolutely.
Right? Because the words that they use to describe the problem is going to be totally different than the words you use. And when you can describe the problem they perceive in their words, it really lets you position yourself as the solution and takes a lot of that nerve-wracking pain of writing the ad copy away.
Well, you kind of brought up 2 points that I kind of want to focus in on. The first is that showing the human element and showing what you care about and the little bit more raw, non-stage, non-Photoshop side of a candidate. And it kind of makes me think about Dr. Mark Campbell, who we interviewed a few weeks ago on the podcast. He shared a story that he was in a Iowa diner about 3 a.m, one campaign cycle, and was reading a newspaper, and it was about some political scandal. And this diner waitress walks up to him and says, "Damn it, I just want to vote for somebody who's like me, who shares my values, is smarter than me, but doesn't act like it." And I think that crystallizes so well. I mean, he's been telling that story for nearly 30 years at this point. And I absolutely love it because you're taking that same idea of you want to communicate those three things, and you're doing it through video, which is an amazing way to reach out in a raw way and communicate that. You're communicating who you are. You're showing that you're like them, whether it's through the people you're talking to and the people you're showing on those ads, or just through yourself and showing, hey, I'm not always in a suit. I'm not always on a stage with perfect lighting and my hair done just right. I'm out walking, talking to people, going to Walmart, doing whatever. You're showing that you share their values. You're talking about things that you both care about, that you identified as common pain points, common frustrations, or common passions. And then you're showing that you're showing a little bit of your smarts as well, but you're showing it in a way that's not affronting, that's not going to be attacking them or trying to prop yourself up, because you're showing your professionalism while not making it a faux professionalism or this overproduced side. And I think that's a really great way of using social media and using video, especially to communicate that. It's very smart. And the second thing is looking at that idea of kind of a lead funnel, of a sales funnel type situation. And for some of the audience, they may be a little bit daunting. There's that idea, like you mentioned, of having multiple parts to that funnel. But honestly, it sounds complicated, but it's not. There are so many tools, the type of tools that you and I use for free downloads and for our email lists and stuff, that make so much of that very easily automated. And it's something you set up once, you put a little bit of thought into, and you may change it a few times, but it's very easy. And especially if you have somebody on your team that understands a little bit about social media, or you do some training with somebody like yourself, you can figure that out and really crack that nut pretty easily. Because I see a lot of candidates in their ads on Facebook. I get targeted for a lot of those, and I follow a lot of candidate pages, so I see this so much, and I'm always surprised by the lack of sophistication in many of those. It's just an image that says, "Hey, donate to my money bomb here," or like you said, chip in $5 to fight the establishment. And if I already like you, if I already love you, maybe, but that's probably not going to compel a whole lot of people. You got to show that urgency. You got to you give them an idea of how you're going to spend the money. Those are two critical things to each fundraising appeal. And you want to lead them through, give them something that they want, and then lead them through the point where they're like, yeah, I really like this guy, or that I really like this woman. They're somebody that's going to do something real for me. And I want to help them. You're invested at that point by the time you've put into reading their content, watch the videos. What are some of those ways that you think, or some of those stages? Kind of break those down a little bit more clearly for us, as far as if I'm a candidate and I've got limited time, I'm not one to learn how to have some 18 stage lead funnel. How many of those, and kind of what should they be as far as the different steps, the kind of minimum that folks should be looking at?
So I would break it down into really kind of 4 steps, right? So number 1, you're going to introduce yourself. This is where you're going to have some sort of video concept. You can test it. It doesn't have to be perfect right out of the gate. It's just a matter of practicing, shooting yourself on camera, talking about things, and with people who are important to the people that need to care about you, and the kind of your 3 whys in terms of, why you're running, why this office, why now. Capture that on camera as often as possible, even if it's just in a simple live broadcast, so that you can get yourself out in front of people. So that's number one. And run that for video views, because video views are the cheapest, like literally a penny per view. If you're paying more than 2 cents per view, you're doing something wrong, right? So that's number one, to target the people you really care about. Number two is to then turn around and drive traffic to your website, because, social media is great, but what we have to remember is that you don't own your Facebook fans, and only 2% of them literally are going to see anything you post. And and theoretically, Facebook could just say, somebody reports one of your posts because they don't like something you said, which especially in the political sphere happens, right? And Facebook could decide, okay, this content is offensive, even if it's really not, because, 2 people reported you because they don't, they think guns should be outlawed, or whatever. You could lose your entire Facebook fan base literally overnight. So you want to drive people to your website where they can hopefully opt in. So that's stage number 3, is to get people on your email list. So once you get people to your website, you want to have something free of value to your people that they can get in exchange for an email address, because an email address you own. And obviously I'm preaching to the choir with you here. You know this. You've got great free resources on your website, cheat sheets and stuff like that to help people get started with their campaigns. But when you set up your that initial free offer, like you said, it can be very simple. There are great tools like Lead Pages and Active Campaign that can help automate that whole process. You set it up once, you say, here's a picture of what you get. Here's the box where you enter your name and your email address. Here's the confirmation page. And then on that confirmation page, that's step 4. We're going to ask them to get out a credit card, right? So that's where you ask them to sign up for an event or take a survey or donate or whatever you decide you want that call to action to be, so that you can change the relationship from subscriber to supporter, right? Because whatever you ask people to do, the moment after they subscribe, they are literally 10 times more likely to do that thing than they are at any other point in their digital relationship with you. So we can really take advantage of that in terms of driving free traffic, and then using those systems and that digital infrastructure you've created around the free opt-ins. If people watch your video or they land on your website and they don't opt in, right? So you can set up a one-time audience, people who watch the video but never landed on the confirmation page. You can retarget those people with your free offer, with a call to action to sign up for an event or whatever it might be, so that you're using the content you've created to identify people who are interested in what you've got, but for whatever reason just didn't sign up yet. Because just because somebody doesn't sign up for your email list doesn't necessarily mean they're not interested. Maybe their kid started crying. People need to see you generally about 7 times before they're going to take action on anything you've done, and it's very expensive to do that on paper.
Right.
But to do it digitally really lets you get a lot more mileage out of that money. So those would be the 4 key steps that I would suggest people start with when they're thinking about their funnel. With the email list, that's honestly a challenge that even I have with my own email list, because I spend so much time doing it for other people that I kind of neglect my own email list.
Yep.
It's like, okay, cool. Like here's your free thing, enjoy. And I'll send out things occasionally that I know are relevant to them. But especially if you're a political campaign, it's really important to kind of segment your audience. So that's kind of like the hidden step 5. It's like the if you have time, if you have bandwidth, if you have the volunteer support to help you implement something like this, if you're able to capture, which people are, depending where they came from, if they're conservative leaning or progressive leaning or libertarian leaning, or if they live in your area or they live somewhere else, or the more you can segment those people with tags coming in, the more you know who you're talking to and can send them super relevant stuff moving forward. But that can be kind of taxing in terms of just the volume of copywriting that needs to happen to really make the most of the segmentation. That it's something that volunteers can help with, but it's something that I struggle with on my own because I just don't have time.
Yeah, I totally understand that the cobbler's shoes are always the one that have holes in them. So it's That's the struggle that I face as well with the content creation side. But I think a couple of things that have become clear through our conversation is one, that it's an absolutely boundless world of possibility to innovate and try new things. That it's really easy to get out there and try stuff and find creative ways to target your message to whoever you're trying to communicate with. And for the kind of campaigns and candidates that we love to work with, efficiency is always a key concern factor. And so it's something we always got to be experimenting with, and part of what I love about your core mission. But there's also a lot of folks, that some people are listening to this is like, oh yeah, I'm going to totally go do that. Others are like, man, I might be able to. And others are like, holy crap, I've been overwhelmed. But that's what you focus on. That's why you do what you do. Let's talk a little bit more about if I'm somebody that's like, hey, I need some help with this. I love the idea. I see promise in it, but I'm not sure that I can just go from this podcast to going and implementing my new, A/B tested multi-level sales funnel Facebook program. What do they do and what can you do for them? How do they get in touch with you and what do you guys do over at your company to help candidates win?
So the best place to start, I've got a free cheat sheet that we kind of touched on a little bit called, 5 quick wins to increase the return on investment for your Facebook marketing. And it kind of takes people through 5 very easy things that take literally like 10 to 15 minutes or less. I wanted them to be very, very simple things when it comes to targeting and stop boosting posts for one. It's a it's a huge waste of money. But I wanted to kind of break that down in terms of like the types of questions they can be asking, a little bit of the tactical stuff that they can do to really feel like they've started the process of getting somewhere with this. Like, okay, I have the pixel on my website. So now people who land on my website but don't opt in, I can reach back out to them again. Now I know which questions to ask in my survey. I know how to do the targeting, how to set up an audience of my website traffic. So those are all things that people can do for free very easily. That's the cheat sheet on my website at jenngray.com. I typically offer free consultations, but I've had kind of a unique challenge in the past week in that I am completely booked.
It's a good problem to have.
It's a good problem to have. So we're looking into the possibility of growing the team to hopefully support other campaigns in the process. But I'm considering going the online course route. I developed an online course. I've developed several actually, most of which were kind of geared generically toward video marketing for small business. But during the election, I created a course called Your Video, Your Voice, Your Vote that really walked people through the process of creating the content and getting it online in the most cost-effective possible way. So number one, how to create the video, how to shoot it as simply as possible, how to legally use little clips from news and stuff like that in an ad if that's appropriate, if you're trying to capture the other candidate in their words or something like that, how to put all that together. Number two, organic posting strategies, in terms of how you approach what you put on your personal page, what goes on your business page, what goes on YouTube, how to set that up so that you can drive as much free traffic as possible. Number three, getting that video out in front of people who don't already know who you are. And then number four, in terms of how to retarget people who actually watch it, what are you going to ask them to do next? So that course was created very kind of specifically for Gary Johnson supporters, but I'm seeing kind of a renewed interest in that topic. So it is not outside the realm of possibility that I will revamp that course to support other candidates and campaigns. And I might just do like a wait list on the website that, people can sign up to get notified as it's available and maybe get early bird access to it as it exists now so they can at least get started. So that's definitely an option I'm considering.
That's pretty cool. And that sounds like a course that I definitely need to take myself as I'm trying to learn more about getting the My Campaign Coach brand and how to run office podcast out to more folks. It's a whole world that I'm trying to come to terms with and trying to learn more about. So that sounds like a really cool resource that I would definitely put me on the wait list for that one because I'm excited to take it when it comes out. Let's, but in addition to the work you're doing there, you also have your own podcast. Talk about that for a second and where folks can find that, kind of what you talk about and who you interview.
Yeah, you bet. So the Leading Liberty podcast is kind of my labor of love to the freedom movement. It was the first podcast ever, marketing and communications podcast ever created for pro-liberty professionals, where we get into kind of the marketing strategies and tactics of running an effective public relations campaign, particularly on social media, but not necessarily exclusive to that. So I've talked to it's hard to narrow them down because there's so many great ones, but the most popular episodes, if people like you would want to just get started and check one out, my most popular one I ever did was with Larry Sharp on how to reshape the debate literally. We talked about some persuasion strategies we can use with conservatives and progressives to kind of bring them around on some limited government type issues, and then also some of the tactical stuff in terms of, like, a 7-year plan for how we can get libertarians in particular elected, which has been a struggle for for the liberty movement. We did another one with Nicholas Sarwark on the mission and vision kind of the Libertarian Party. That one was really popular. We did one with John Kramer with the Institute for Justice on media relations. That's kind of his area of expertise. I really try to find people who know things I don't, and there are a whole lot of them. People who have, like yourself, who, are experts in the ground game, stuff like that. So we're definitely getting into kind of strategy and tactical stuff with marketing for pro-liberty causes and campaigns, whether it's nonprofit or political.
Well, I think especially for our audience and folks that are wanting to learn how to run better, more efficient, more effective campaigns, it's a natural fit to go check out your podcast. I've enjoyed listening to it myself, and I've learned quite a bit. I highly recommend it to anybody that's listening to go check it out. It's Leading Liberty, and it's on pretty much every type of podcast platform out there. So whether you're in Google Play or Stitcher or iTunes, just look it up. It's a great resource that I hope you guys will check out. So as we're kind of wrapping up, let's first hit, what are some of the, you got any closing advice for the folks that are listening?
It's tough because, and it's going to tie into the advice that I'm going to give, which is to know who you're talking, before we start talking, we have to know who we're talking to and what problems they perceive so that we can position ourselves as the solution, because we can have the most advanced Facebook ad ninja, split test, call to action button, audience building, list segmenting monster in all the land, right? But if your messaging isn't on point, none of that stuff matters. So the very simple solution there is to have conversations with as many people as possible. Ask them what they're concerned about, and even if it doesn't even have to be an online survey. It can just be a personal conversation with people, and really start to either internally or directly, like, write it down, bank the things that people tell you they're concerned about, that they care about, and use that to guide you, right? Because I think anyone who goes into, the running for office space in particular, especially the kind of people who listen to your show, I think are doing it with a good heart. They're doing it for the right reasons because they believe in these ideas and they want to serve people. And the best way to serve people is to listen to them first so that you can give them what they want so that they can give you what you want. I hope that helps.
Oh, absolutely. I think that one of the most underrated aspects of campaigning and what candidates have to do in order to win is listen. It's far too easy when we're trying to communicate a message to get wrapped up in what I'm saying, how I'm saying it, all those things, when the most important thing is to listen. If you want to represent people, you got to know what they care about. You got to know what they believe and what keeps them up at night. And by listening, by just repeatedly having conversations with your average Joe voter, people of all backgrounds, all races, creeds, economic status, you do that, and you get to know the people you're wanting to work for better, and that's critical. Some of the most effective candidates, Dr. Brian Bird, who we had on the podcast a while back, and we worked heavily with his campaign. The guy knocked over 5,000 doors himself in the city council district here in Fort Worth. He had thousands of conversations with voters at the door, at coffee events, at community gatherings, and he knew what these people cared about. He knew their names. He knew what kept them up at night. What were the pain points in their lives? And you can do that through all kinds of mediums, whether it's through, reaching out to folks via social media, whether it's just talking to them in person, wherever you go, just focus on listening. And it's a powerful tool that not enough candidates do is just take a second, shut up, and hear what other folks are saying. So, here at the end, I just want to make sure folks can get in touch with you, can reach out for your expertise and consultations and for some of the free resources. I'm going to be linking to those 5 tips, those 5 winning strategies on your digital prospecting sheet. We're going to link over there so folks can find you in your email list and sign up and get that. And to the podcast, we're going to keep all those links in there. What's your website that people need to go to, and where can folks find you on social media?
So the best place to find me is on my website at jenngray.com. You'll see links in there too, like you mentioned, the free cheat sheet for getting started with Facebook marketing, some of the questions you want to ask your audience. You also see a tab up top there for the podcast, or you can go directly to jenngray.com/liberty. That'll take you to all the episodes on the podcatcher of your choice, and people can follow me on social media at the Leading Liberty Podcast with Jenn Gray. It's at Hey Jenn Gray, Jenn with 2 N's, Gray with an A.
That's fantastic. Jenn, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been a pleasure getting to talk to you on my podcast here and getting to do the interview with you on your podcast as well. I'm excited about getting both of these out there and just the stuff that folks are going to learn from hearing from me today. It's valuable information that if they deploy it in their campaigns, they're going to get some great wins. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. Guys, I want to thank Campaign Sidekick, our sponsor, and I hope that you guys will check out the show notes for Jenn's content information, the links that we shared during the show for all of the freebies and stuff she has to give away. Be sure to take advantage of the free digital prospecting cheat sheet that she offers on her website. It's great. Sign up for her email list, and she'll email it to you right away. And as one last quick request, going off the call to action that Jenn always encourages folks to make, if you're enjoying this podcast, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button, give it a rating, and go check out some of the free downloads that we offer over at mycampaigncoach.com. We'll talk to y'all again next week.
Please subscribe and rate us on iTunes to help spread the word. We'll be back with you next week with more campaign insights from My Campaign Coach.